go. Train tight. Where go?
Gentlemen, this school is about combat. There are no points for second place.
This is the Never Down, Never Out podcast with your host, T.R. Matson.
Welcome back. T.R. Matson, Never Down, Never Out. Still hope you're loving that intro. It fires me up still, so I'm never getting sick of Dawson and his work on that stuff. So thanks for tuning in today. Trying to get some recordings done and ticking through some of these. We are going to pop into the power of persistence. And this one, you know, a lot of times I speak from the heart. I just kind of think about what it means to me. But this one, there was some things I wanted to go over that I think are important. So I looked it up. I was like, well, let's look up what is persistence. Maybe I've been homeschooling too much and I have been breaking down sentences too much. So with my son, but I looked it up. I'm like, but persistence. Well, it's a noun and it's the act or fact of persisting. Well, I love definitions that just use the word. They're like, thanks. That helps me out a lot. So what's persisting? Well, I like this. To go on resolutely or stubbornly. I focus on the stubbornly, in spite of opposition or warning. Well, that sounds like it could be good or bad, right? I mean, if you just force yourself into a situation because, dang it, I'm going to do it. I mean, I guess technically that's persisting, but not necessarily in a good way, right? Not taking the advice of others around you, maybe not going for the right thing, but you're like, I'm being persistent. And you're like, well, there's good persistence and bad persistence, right? And if the whole world's telling you shouldn't be doing something, well, listen to your heart. And if you still believe you should, then you should, right? But the power of persistence, the being persistent, is not a carte blanche, get out of jail free card of putting yourself in bad situations, right? You know, like an example would be, you know, all my friends are saying I should stop drinking or gambling, but dang it, I'm just going to keep doing it. Like, well, yeah, I mean, technically by that definition, you are stubbornly doing something, regardless of the warning. That doesn't mean it's a good thing. So let's focus on the positive power of persistence and where we get it. So why is it so important? Well, because you're going to go through things in life, and you're going to go through things in life that don't necessarily make sense to you at the time, or frankly, ever. And if you folded, if you just quit every time that happened, you'd get nowhere. That's just the reality of it. You know, I had a discussion with my son a couple weeks ago, and we talked about the difference. I mean, again, probably putting too much on his plate as a 7-year-old, but, you know, maybe not. I don't know. But we talked about the difference between an ordinary and extraordinary life. And I told him, you know, lots of people live ordinary lives and they're just fine. They're solid. I heard it in a movie, a solid B plus life, right? And he goes, okay. He goes, well, what's an extraordinary life? And I go, an extraordinary life is you are constantly reaching, constantly pushing yourself, constantly dealing with adversity and hardships, but you're pushing through them and coming out a better person tomorrow than today, or on the other side. And, you know, if you live that way, you now will have the opportunities to really experience some pretty extraordinary things. And he looked at me and he was like, well, I want to live an extraordinary life like you did, or like you are. That's how he said it, like you are, not did. Did would be cool, but hurt a little bit. But yeah, I want to live an extraordinary life like you are. And to me, I was like, whew, okay. Okay, let's keep working at things and keep developing yourself and all that. But also there was a part of me that's like, wow, my son looks at me like I've lived an extraordinary life, which is pretty cool. Anyway, side note. So persistence. Well, how can we build that persistence, right? Because it doesn't come naturally. Like I wasn't naturally persistent as a young kid. A lot of times when adversity hit, I folded. And that was it. I crumbled and I gave in to peer pressure and I did the wrong things because I didn't really know. So then I made some notes here on how you can develop it. Well, you've got to embrace your failure, right? Self-doubt's huge. You got to get over self-doubt. But then you've got to, in my opinion, come up with clear goals and get through the short term. I think that's the real big stomping point, if you would, in the military, whenever they would teach anything, they'd have foot stomping point because they knew it'd be on a test. This is a foot stomping point, is you've got to understand your failure and the fact that you have to accept it. And then you have to embrace it and go, okay, that's on me. I screwed that one up. But then you have to set yourself some goals. And if you can do that, set clear, concise, obtainable goals in the short term, a lot of times if we can get through the short term, then we're building that resilience through persistence. And that's a good thing. So an example I've talked about is when I got grounded, T-45s as a student, for no reason whatsoever. Some instructor thought I was too big for the plane. Now, that's not a subjective thing. Like there's very specific height and arm length and leg length and all of these requirements that I went through multiple times before I ever got to a T-45. I did it down in Pensacola. I did it again at Vance Air Force Base because the Air Force did their own thing and they wanted to double check. And I passed all of that and had zero restrictions for any plane that I could fly in the military. And yet some instructor one night, because who knows what he was going through in his own life, decided that he was going to report me and say that I was too big for the plane. And it took a month off of my training. I mean, it grounded me for 30 days. And I mean, that was a choice at that point. The persistence that I had slowly learned as a kid and through college came into play right then and there. And looking back at it, as an instructor later on, twice in my career, well, 3 times technically in T-45s, I laughed at it because I'm like, dude, there was no legs to that. Like that absolutely would not work if I was an instructor. Like I couldn't just go. So I have no idea what was going on behind the scenes, nor does it matter. But I do believe that was an incident where I needed to learn a really strong degree of persistence and pushing through regardless of the warnings or adversity in front of me. And I chose to do that by the story I've told of running every day in South Texas in the summer on the road going into base multiple times a day, just to show that I was not done. I was just not going to give up. Much like the air sickness story where I decided they were going to have to kick me out. I was not going to quit just because I got sick. Same thing with this. I wasn't going to quit. I wasn't going to let them win. They would have to throw me out of the program. And I also wasn't going away easily. I wasn't going away quietly. I was going to be in their minds every day. And I think that's important too for persistence. And, you would think, okay, well, looking back, the persistence that I learned maybe with the air sickness is what helped me get through this adversity. Well, I think they were all building blocks for stuff that happened even later in my life. So, it's funny how it kind of builds on itself. And that truly is the power of this being persistent, being a persistent person and having that mindset of, you're going to have to do the hard thing to get rid of me. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to be here. I'm going to put in 100% effort, regardless of what you think of me, regardless of what, you decide. I'm not going to make the decision easy for you. I'm going to push through and keep going. And you can apply that to very big issues in your life. You can apply it to very small issues in your life. But remember, when we're building this persistent mindset, the key is it's a positive persistence. Because again, by definition, you can be persistent in a negative way. So think about that today. When you look at what you're going through and you're kind of at your wit's end and you're kind of exhausted, and it's like, man, it's rough, right? It's mentally, it's rough. It's amazing how being mentally fatigued is sometimes far worse than being physically fatigued. And so it's one of those situations where you can use this persistent mindset as fuel and go, I'm not done yet. I'm not over this yet. Okay. I'm still moving forward. I might be moving forward slower than I was yesterday, but it's still forward. And if it's still forward, I still have a chance. So that is truly the power of persistence, is you give yourself that chance to keep going. Because what's the opposite of being persistent? It's quitting. We've talked about it. If you quit, I 100% can tell you what the outcome is going to be, because you quit. But if you keep going, you got a chance. Hope that sits well this morning. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you tomorrow.
T.R. Mattson is a 20-year Navy career combat veteran who flew the E-2C Hawkeye and F/A-18C Hornet. He's the author of Treason Flight and Vengeance Flight. You can reach him at trmattson or trmattson.com. Thanks for listening to the Never Down, Never Out podcast.